Hello and welcome to the iPod Nano 7th Gen Ultimate Repair Guide. Now, I'd say this iPod probably a medium difficulty repair. It's not as hard as the Nano 4th and 5th Gen. It's probably even easier than the 2nd Gen. It might be a bit easier than the iPod Touch 4th Gen that we did last time as well. But yeah, I guess it's just a bit of a time consuming one because, again, it's held together with a lot of glue and everything. So, yeah. In order to take it apart, first we got to take off that white bit of plastic on the back there, and that's just held on, with adhesive. So in order to take that off, I use both isopropyl alcohol and heat. You don't want to use too much heat, obviously, because you can melt it. But just give it a spray with alcohol, heat it up, maybe do it a couple times. Spray, heat, spray, heat, spray, heat. Just because, it's easy to scratch the back there, getting it off with the metal pry tools or whatever. So you want to really loosen it as much as possible before you start using any tools. I know in the video I'm using the box cutter knife, but to be honest, if you weaken that adhesive enough, you can even just start to slide it off with your finger as well. But yeah, just getting that box cutter knife and sort of going under it, just being really careful not to scrape the frame there. Because, this is one of the nicer iPods, and I know you don't want to go scratching it up. But yeah, after you get that off, that'll reveal a screw. And, I should also mention that flex cable there is the Bluetooth antenna. So, you want to be kind of careful with that and not to rip it or anything. Otherwise, you'll lose your Bluetooth. So, after you get that screw out, you can just lift up that plastic piece sideways like that. And that'll reveal another two screws. And these are just holding in the metal frame that the touchscreen LCD assembly is connected to. So just getting these two out. And all these screws are different sizes as well. So I would recommend either a parts tray like I've got here or one of those little magnetic mats. I'll put a picture up. And now that screen won't come straight out. It's also glued down at the bottom there and also held in with some clips at the side. So just getting your heat gun out, pointing it at the bottom. It's only on the bottom where the adhesive is, so you won't have to go up the sides or anything. And now taking your box cutter knife. And again, the box cutter knife is the best tool to use here. If you try using the plastic pry tool, you're not going to get anywhere. If you use the metal pry tool or the ice SMO, whatever you want to call it, those are usually too thick as well, and they're very flexible. So not really appropriate here. Just using a box cutter knife. Usually a used dull one is best so you don't cut yourself. But just copy what I do here. Usually you want to pry from the side there like that. There are clips going up and down both sides, as I said earlier, because you'll see the design after I open it up, but there is a metal frame holding this in. I would recommend watching the entire process of me taking this out before attempting on your own, because it's not really self-explanatory, and the way that metal frame comes out. So just putting your box cutter knife in, prying up, and doing this on both sides. You're just releasing those metal clips, sort of. They're not in there too hard, but and then working around the bottom. And on this model I do have a cracked screen. It is possible to get off a good screen without cracking it, or a good front glass without cracking it, but it will require some extra care, so just be extra careful. And I'll also say this, if your screen isn't cracked and it's your first go, there is a chance you will crack it. With experience, you can get good enough to the point where you can take it off without cracking it. But for a first try, it's maybe, less than a 50% chance you'll get it off from my experience. So, I know it might be useful to get a replacement screen as well, even if you haven't cracked it, just because, you may crack it in the process. And don't rip it off too quickly, because we have all these cables connected. Cable for the LCD and for the touch as well, and the battery is usually adhered to that assembly there. So to take the battery out, just get your pry tool, go behind. I wouldn't recommend using alcohol for that, because if it gets behind the LCD backlight, it'll just probably stay in there. Sometimes it'll evaporate out, but not always, and then you can ruin your LCD and get watermarks at the back. So just avoid alcohol, just pry it out. And just taking care as well with this model. This model's pretty fragile. Just look how thin those flex cables are. Now, if you want this repair to be easy and quick, I'd recommend buying that LCD touch assembly all in one piece. if what you're after is a screen replacement or LCD repair, because that's what ends up taking the majority of time on this model. Usually when you buy a replacement LCD or a replacement touch panel, they'll come separately, and then what you'll have to do is take apart this whole assembly and re-adhere it using glue. So if you want to save time, you can probably get this whole assembly as one piece just off of AliExpress or whatever. It will be more expensive, but it'll probably save you maybe up to an hour. So if you think that's worth it, then yeah, just maybe go with that. But yeah, I'm going to show you how you would repair it. Yeah, but in this tutorial, I'll show you the full process of taking apart this whole assembly and replacing both the touchscreen and the LCD. So yeah, to get started, just take your screwdriver, and there's 6 screws total, 3 on each side, and these are all the same size. So yeah. Sometimes these can be a bit difficult to remove because that frame is pretty flexible. So as you're unscrewing, I'd just like put your thumb behind the screw to keep it straight so that you don't bend it in, because yeah, if you strip one of these screws, it's not a fun time. It might be very difficult to take apart, and you might just get frustrated and end up breaking your frame there. So yeah, just take your time, try not to strip them. And yeah, next step is to remove the LCD from the frame. As you can see, I'm carefully doing this using tweezers, but it is slightly adhered all the way around the outside as well, so just being very careful. Yeah, careful not to crack it, because you can very easily crack your LCD taking that out there. And yeah, setting that to the side. Now we have to remove the glass from the metal frame here. Yeah, we can just do this using the box cutter knife. Don't really need any heat or alcohol. It's held on with a very thin piece there, so just be careful not to bend the frame, because you could accidentally break it here. And yeah, that home button assembly is also a part of the Digitizer Flex. So yeah, you don't have to worry about that, because we'll just be chucking that out anyways. You will have to salvage that home button though, most likely. Most of the replacement Digitizers don't come with a new home button as well. Yeah, I'm using the term screen interchangeably here to mean both the LCD and the touch panel / Digitizer. But yeah, you'll know what I mean when I say it. The glass is called the Digitizer, and the LCD is the actual screen itself, if you didn't know that. So yeah, just taking that home button out, and yeah, you want to clean that old adhesive off of this metal frame here. Yeah, so just doing that using your fingers, using some isopropyl alcohol is always best. And again, if you don't have a bottle of isopropyl alcohol and you do this often, I would always recommend getting that. Always comes in handy. Yeah, and you can get a bottle for like less than $10, so it's worth it. Get it on eBay, have it shipped to your house, or you can, in Australia there's an electronics shop called J-Car. That's pretty common. They tend to carry it. But yeah, just cover it in isopropyl alcohol. Grab one of your tools and just wipe it all off. Yeah, you do want to get it pretty clean, because it's just a small bit of metal that the new screen's going to be adhered to, so getting it as clean as possible will give you the most amount of grip on that new digitizer there. Yeah, just giving it a wipe as well. And yeah, now taking out our new digitizer here, touchscreen, front glass, whatever you want to call it. Now, I will say with these do have a high failure rate, I found. Either they're coming damaged, or they are also very easy to damage while installing them, because you see that flex cable there? That has to be bent while installing it. So yeah, if you are replacing that part, I would recommend maybe buying a couple of these, just in case. Yeah, and as you can see, there's a bit of protective plastic on the inside there of the digitizer. I'd leave that on, just so we don't get any glue on the actual inside, otherwise you'll be spending a lot of time cleaning that off later. I usually take that off last, right before we put the whole thing back together, or right before we put the LCD in rather. But yeah, so what you want to do is you want to grab that flex cable and give it 2 bends, as I have done here. One, it's kind of hard to see, maybe I'll put a picture, but you want to bend it in the same way that the old one was. So maybe take note of how the other one was bent before you do this. Yeah, but you do need to bend it, otherwise it won't sit in properly. So you bend it up, and then a bit further down the cable you bend it forward again. And now grabbing your home button, putting that in, and then taking the home button part of the flex and bending that over. Sometimes you'll have a bit of adhesive on that piece where the home button goes, but this particular one didn't come with adhesive, so I'm just using some super glue here in order to adhere that down. Yeah, sorry, the iPod keeps going off the screen at this section of the video. It's quite hard to repair one of these things whilst simultaneously trying to film it, I find. But yeah, you want to get that centered pretty much. And also with that home button, you'll notice there's two little prongs sticking out on each side. You want to get those lined up properly. They line up with some holes on the metal frame, just so you only put it in one way. It's pretty self-explanatory when you see it. And yeah, just make sure that glue dries. Maybe hold it for a minute or so. Yeah, and in order to adhere this metal frame to the digitizer, we'll have to use some sort of adhesive glue. You maybe could get away with double-sided tape, but I find it probably wouldn't be strong enough in this case. So what you do want to use is some phone-specific super glue. I use this one called B7000. And the reason you want to use this over regular super glue is this glue dries in a sort of more rubbery texture that allows for a little bit of play. It's still quite a firm glue, and I found that after like 30 days or whatever, it does get pretty hard and pretty strong. But yeah, compared to the super glue you'll find it just at the supermarket or wherever you get your normal super glue from, that stuff will usually dry quite hard. And when you use a hard drying glue, gluing metal to glass, it just doesn't work very well. You'll find that the glass will shatter really easily just because it needs that little bit of movement back and forth when it's installed. Otherwise, yeah, you'll drop it, there won't be any play, it'll just crack straight away. And that's a very amateur sort of phone repair mistake you can make, is just using a very hard drying super glue. I talked about that in the iPod Touch 4th Gen video as well. The first couple times I ever fixed a device, I'd used a hard drying glue, just gluing the glass straight onto the metal housing, and both those times the phone ended up cracking within the next sort of month. So yeah, it's a mistake I often see on iPods I buy broken as well. Yeah, the previous owner will have tried to replace the screen and they will have used the super glue just to put the new screen on, and yeah, and it always ends up cracking. So that's a massive tip there. Yeah, so the glue I would recommend you use is this glue called B7000. Yeah, it dries in a very rubbery sort of texture, and it's just much more appropriate for phone repairs than a lot of these other generic glues. So yeah, just pick yourself up a tube of that. I raved on about it a lot in the iPod Touch 4th Gen video as well, so if you haven't seen that, go check that out. But yeah, I sell it on eBay. You get it on AliExpress probably for even cheaper. But yeah, it's just get some of that. Don't even listen to the reasoning. Just get the proper thing. I know you're not going to get the proper thing. Everybody just wants to get it done now and get it done quickly, and they're just going to use whatever they got on hand. And you probably some old tube of super glue that's been sitting in the drawer for the last 5 years that's got 3 drips left in. That's probably what you're going to end up using. That's what everybody ends up doing when you're doing this for the first time. But just, I know, you sitting there looking at your old tube of super glue, wondering if it's going to work or not, and I'm here to tell you, mate, it's just not going to work. Just go out and buy the proper thing and do it properly, because I'll tell you what's going to happen if you use that old tube of glue. You're going to put it together, you're going to think it's great, going to reassemble it, 2 weeks will go by, it'll fall out of your pocket from like 30 centimeters off the ground, and it'll crack, and it'll just frustrate you, because it shouldn't have cracked, but it did, because you used a very brittle drying glue that didn't allow for any play, and the glass just shattered on even the smallest bit of impact. So yeah, just get the proper thing, and yeah, just run that glue up the sides, up the top, up the bottom. You'll figure it out. It's a little bit messy, but oh well. Yeah, this is why I said to leave that bit of plastic cover on the back of that digitizer there. If you peeled that off, you're going to get glue all over the inside of that glass, and then you'll have to spend the next couple minutes cleaning it off. So yeah, hopefully you left that on. Now grabbing your frame, I like to line it up with the home button first, then at the top there. Yeah, you'll realise like the digitizer layer will sit sort of next to the frame, and yeah, the sides will sort of go around it. I don't know if I'm making sense, but when you're looking at the two parts, you'll know what I mean. And yeah, you just sort of want to hold these two parts together while they dry. This glue that I use, I don't know, it's pretty quick drying. It tends to get firmer over time though. But if you just hold it for like 2 minutes, it should be good. And now, if your LCD was fine, we can continue to the next stage of putting that LCD back in. But if you had a cracked LCD or a bad backlight or whatever, and you're replacing the LCD as well, just put that whole assembly to the side. And now come over to your broken LCD, and we just have to harvest that metal backplate there. So in order to do that, grab your box cutter knife yet again, just going in between it. It's just glued on very easily, and give it a pry. There is some circuitry on the back there that's super glued down. Yeah, just get your box cutter, slide underneath. You can take this off pretty easily without damaging it. Although, yeah, there's no reason to take it off if the LCD is good anyway. So yeah, just take that old one, toss it in the bin. I don't know if it's broken. If it's just a watermarked backlight, you can sometimes salvage it by putting another backlight on. I don't think I'll show that in this video, but I will show that eventually if I haven't already in one of these tutorials. And yeah, just grabbing out your new LCD here. Make sure you get it the right way. Line it up, put it back on. I think there's some like white plastic nubs that you can line it up with. So yeah, just line those up. You will need to get a bit of adhesive to stick down the top bit of that LCD there, like the part with the electronics on it and stuff. I think I just used some glue, although double-sided tape might be more appropriate there. Just I already had the glue out, so might as well hold it down, let it dry. And yeah, now we just got to put the LCD and the digitizer back together. So yeah, what you want to do now is peel off the layer of protective tape on both the LCD and on the digitizer. And yeah, you want to make sure that both of these surfaces are really clean. So if you peel them off both straight away and then put it together, you won't have any dust or anything under there, most likely. But you know, if you do get some dust, it's not the end of the world. Just give it a wipe down with the cloth, bit of isopropyl alcohol. Oh yeah, if you're wiping it down with tissues and you're wondering why there's so much residue left over, just use some toilet paper instead. I find toilet paper leaves less residue than tissues. That's why whenever I'm wiping stuff down, I'm using toilet paper here. Also, a microfiber cloth is always good. Yeah, that's another good tip. Just use your t-shirt. You're always wearing a microfiber cloth anyways. Yeah, and you can see I'm taking it apart here because I had some adhesive on the inside, or maybe some dust, I don't know. But yeah, you want to make sure that they're both surfaces are clean. Otherwise, you will be able to see those marks when the screen's turned on. Yeah, you can use some alcohol here as well. That usually gets the fingerprints off pretty well. Make sure you don't sandwich that touch flex under there. It's quite easy to do. And yeah, now we just want to grab those screws and screw the thing back together. Those 6 little ones. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. And yeah, this was the most time consuming part of this whole process here. This screen is kind of a pain. So if you watched this whole part of the video and you thought, I don't want to do that, I'd rather have my hour back, instead of buying the touch or the LCD separately, you can probably just buy them as one whole assembly off of AliExpress or something like that, if you can find it. Although yeah, it is more common to find the parts individually. And yeah, now if you're just replacing the screen, we can start putting it back together now. But if you want to replace the battery as well, it's a very simple sort of process. It will require soldering, so just bring it over to your soldering iron. And there is a little bit of rubber coating over those pins there. So before you solder anything on, you just want to grab your tweezers and scrape off that rubber coating first. And yeah, I always like to put some flux on the solder joints before we take off the old battery, so that's what that is there. And just grab your soldering iron and remove the old battery there. Pretty simple. Yeah, probably best to use the tweezers and then just run over all those joints all at once and it'll just pop straight off like that. Yeah. Putting that to the side. Oh yeah, before you put your new battery in, you might want to like flatten down those pads there, just because if you put a new battery in and all those pads are just big blobs, sometimes those blobs can like mush themselves together and you can get a short circuit under the battery and it can be a little bit hard to see. So yeah, I tend to replace the batteries under a microscope just because I have one. It's not necessary at all. It's actually extremely overkill. But yeah, something just like a small magnifying glass, or a lot of times the helping hands tool will come with a magnifying glass. If you just buy one of those, yeah, it can help significantly doing stuff like this. And yeah, just soldering that new battery back in. Like to heat up one pad at a time until you got it in. And then if it doesn't look like there's enough solder, just go back over each joint individually with some good lead-free solder and a bunch of flux, so you can get some nice shiny silver solder blobs on there. Yeah, pretty straightforward. I mean, if you really wanted to, you probably even put a layer of Captain tape over those joints there, although it's not necessary. You're not going to short anything out there. And yeah, that's your new battery. Now just reassembling the device. We can put the LCD connector in first. It's still fragile, but not as fragile as the touchscreen connector. So just being very careful and gentle as you put that in. And yeah, now we just, yeah, at this point, this is the best point to test it out. So just switching on your device here. The thing you want to really test for is the touch functionality. So just pick up one of the apps and move it all the way around the screen. If the app doesn't move all the way around the screen and it stops, then yeah, you've got a faulty touch screen, or you may have broken it while installing it, which is pretty common because, yeah, again, you do have to bend that flex cable in order to, yeah, so just grab one of the apps and move it all the way around the screen. And if it doesn't work, well, you've probably broken your touch screen while installing it. Either that or it's come dead from the factory, which it's pretty common on this model just because you have to bend the flex cable there to install it. One thing you can look for before concluding that it's dead is to just unclip the touch connector again and having a look at that connector there. Sometimes what can happen is a little bit of glue can end up getting into that connector and it can just be preventing one of the pins from making proper contact. And you can always clean that out with the cotton bud and isopropyl alcohol. That's happened to me once. But 99% of the time, most likely you've got a bad touch screen and you're just going to have to replace it again, which is very annoying and very time consuming, but you know, that's how it is. So yeah, assuming all went well, you want to insert that metal frame into the top of the iPod there and push it up nice and flush, similarly to how you would install an M-SATA SSD, and then just pushing down at the sides there, it'll clip in slightly. And then again at the bottom. You don't need to use any adhesive. I know they used adhesive from the factory, but I find that it's in very securely without it. Now we still got 2 more screws to put in as well. So yeah, that's not going anywhere. And yeah, now just putting those 2 screws in at the bottom. And yeah, after you've done that, just pushing down that plastic Wi-Fi antenna again. I mean, not Wi-Fi, Bluetooth antenna. And then taking that screw and putting that back in. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Now all we have to do is re-adhere that little bit of plastic at the bottom there. Yeah, so in order to do that, we want to give both pieces a very thorough clean first. So just take out your tweezers and scrape off all the old adhesive on the Bluetooth antenna there. Yeah, and you also want to clean all the adhesive off the plastic part as well. So just grabbing some isopropyl alcohol. Yeah, I'm using a Q-tip here. That also works pretty well. And now grab some of your double-sided. I wouldn't use tape for this, to be honest. It's going to fall off too easily. Just grabbing some of that B7000 glue or another phone-specific glue and just coating that whole bottom piece in it. Yeah, again, if you use that hard brittle glue here, if you ever need to take it apart again, you're 100% going to break something. Probably the Bluetooth antenna, maybe the plastic part as well. But yeah, you want to use your phone specific glue. And just pushing that in there. Holding it tight for a little bit. And here's another good tip I got for you. If you just leave it as is at this stage, that plastic part is going to sort of slip back as it dries and you'll get a massive gap where that plastic part is. So what you want to do is you want to grab a rubber band and just put it around it so it'll hold the plastic part in place as it dries. You might want to leave it for like a day or so, and then yeah, after the day has passed, the glue will have dried and that plastic bit will have dried in the proper place and it will be flush with the housing. Yeah, if it's not flush, it looks pretty terrible, to be honest. So yeah, and I usually do 2 of them at once, just like that. There's another one I've repaired earlier. Yeah, there's an example of one that's dried incorrectly, where the bottom has come back and there's a bit of a gap there. And yeah, it just doesn't look too good. It looks ugly, and you can tell that it's been opened. So yeah, you want to avoid that. And yeah, so thanks for watching this. I'd like to give a big thank you to all you guys watching for 100 subs, mate. That's pretty sick. Didn't even think we'd get that many. So yeah, that's kind of exciting, I'd say. Yeah, I know it's not as big as some other channels, but you know, the fact that even one person watches these blows my mind. So yeah, thanks for that. yeah, you may have noticed there wasn't birds chirping in the background in this one. I'm recording this from my new place. So I was just living at home with my parents before, so I usually go down to the park to film these, just because it's real weird filming. Oh, it's real weird recording audio in the house when everybody else can hear. So yeah, now that I've moved out, it's a lot easier to make these. And yeah, if you've watched this and you can't be bothered fixing your own, I always sell these on my eBay store. Links to that's always in the description. I also sell a bunch of other iPod parts as well. So if you're looking to fix your old iPod, I might have some of the parts in stock. Just keep in mind it's Australia only shipping. So yeah, thanks for watching this. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. See you in the next one. Bye.